Wow, that one hit kind of hard. There's a lot to unpack there, and not to dredge up the past, but I think it's safe to say that your track record speaks for itself, and women are not unlucky underground.
I think quite the opposite. You're right. It's it was a data point in one of fortunately very few, and most data points were the complete opposite. But I also go underground at Voisey's Bay today, and I see something totally different. I see a more diverse workforce. I see not a blink of an eye when a female is approaching, a work area. So those are small things that maybe I'm the only one that notices. But there is actually another mining engineer from the province here in the audience who could probably speak to it better, Kate. But yeah, it's a different environment. That's one I hope Kate never experiences as a recent graduate of mining engineering working at Voisey Bay Mine today. But yeah, that happened. I'm sure it still happens. But we're making small steps every day in the right direction.
Colleen, how have you seen the industry change its approach to diversity, equity, and inclusion over the years?
I've seen quite a few different approaches. I've seen some really targeted hiring practices, and I support those from the point of view that what gets measured gets done. We're an engineer-heavy industry, and we like KPIs. I do too. And, you really have to put intention around it, and I support that. I am sensitive to the other side of the coin, which is we never want to put forward the idea that we're hiring because someone is female, which can also undercut their skills and their value in the industry. So it's a fine balance, but I do support the idea of targets. We were talking about that just before the panel today, and they do have a place in this journey.
Thank you. Bonnie, I'd like to talk to you a little bit about what some of the biggest challenges that you've encountered or that you've seen in your experience in terms of promoting diversity in rural communities.
In rural communities, it's extremely difficult to get the talent that you need. So we want to hire locals. So what we've put in place is a program where we can bring in females and train them so that they can not, they'll be inexperienced, but they'll be prepared to do the job that they need to do. And that's very important, and it's the only way, as far as I'm concerned, that we're going to be able to succeed in rural areas. As I said in my speech, that it's extremely important to utilize the people that we have. So in order to do that, we have to be prepared to train the people and give them the tools that they need to be successful in their work.
And you and I have had some conversations about this, but I'd like to talk a bit more about how we as a community collectively, and then I guess different levels of government, can help support that effort.
Well, there's different ways, I guess. They can provide, us, like in the area now, right, there's a college, and the college is open, but there's absolutely nothing in the college. So that would be great if we could put some kind of training or something there in the college to support the local people, even support us in helping train the local people. That would be extremely important. Plus, diversity is not only females, it's having people from different countries, people living in Canada, different nationalities. To me, it's important that we include everyone, and it's in the towns right now. We do see in the town that I live in Springdale, you see an influx of people from outside the country, and I think it's extremely important that people inside the towns are prepared for that influx, and that the schools, the training is available there so that we can put those people in the proper places, and train them and work with them and to be in, our work with us in our industries.
You mentioned empathy in your presentation, and we hear a lot about the importance of leading with empathy. How important is that in diversity, equity, and inclusion efforts?
Empathy is extremely important. I will give you an example of we were one of the first plane load of people that came in from the Ukraine. I believe I mentioned this to you before, Amy. Some of the first people from Ukraine came to work with us on our site, and I was pretty much like a mother to them. I had very much empathy. They were here, they were away from their homeland, pretty much fled to, to get somewhere better for themselves. And so I was extremely empathetic with them because they didn't have the resources that they needed to succeed. And one in particular, to this day, I still help him. He called me the other day. His mom just came. He was trying to get an appointment with a doctor. He said, Bonnie, will you help me get an appointment with the doctor for my mom? I did that. So, you got to be empathetic. You got to try to help the people that are coming into your towns. You can't just, assume that they know everything. You have to try to help them. And if you try to help them, they will never forget that, I'm telling you. He said, how can I ever thank you? I said, just do it to somebody else. Just help somebody else and put the word about the good company that that we are out, and we'll get, people will want to come to work for us, right?
Can I comment?
Absolutely.
I love that. I love the concept of playing it forward, and, of helping your neighbor. There's, for immigrants to settle, welcoming centers are needed, right? And this is, provincial government, nonprofits, organizations like the Association of New Canadians. But we all have a role to play to make people feel welcome. And it's really not that difficult. No. It's really being a good neighbor, just being a neighbor, asking how you are. Sometimes that's really, very important. Asking to help. And, we've seen small things make a huge impact. I have a short story to tell. One of my colleagues recently, this was a few months ago, had a neighbor who was a Muslim immigrant, and this is in Lab West region, and, asked how he is, and said, he was a bit upset because there was a holiday coming up and they couldn't find the challah meat, in their community for the celebration. We have a rail line, not a big deal. He said, you know what? I can get that meat here for you, for your celebration. To him, it was super simple, and he took care of it. But for that community, all of a sudden, they're welcome. They're able to keep their traditions and be able to be a part of the community. And that is truly what being a good neighbor is, and it makes all the difference. So, yes, you need those welcoming committees, but we just all have a part in being a good neighbor.
Absolutely, and I'd like to elaborate on that a little more. Making culture, tradition, religion, whatever it is that makes you unique, making that accessible, it goes a long way. And like Alice shared just now, we've seen that directly. I'd like to put it to the rest of the panelists, in your experience, what role do you believe community and businesses play in making these things more accessible?
So I think community, it means the difference between a person staying to work with you or leaving. That's the bottom line. Speaking from experience, I've lived in a community where we've been the only white family, and it is extremely hard. I think that's why I'm so empathetic towards, sorry, I'm going to fill up. I think that's why I'm so empathetic towards people.
That's okay. Empathy it's really important, and you're illustrating that right now. It can be tough.
It could mean the world for you to say to somebody, how are you doing today? Yeah,
goes a long way. And when you're alone, feeling alone and isolated, it doesn't matter what your education is, how experienced you are. When you show up to work, if you're not feeling okay and safe, then you're not bringing your full self to the job.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I'd like to change directions a little, and we have touched on this a bit, but I want to delve into it a little more. Alice, as a woman, working again, I know we've said this, but I want to repeat the message. Working in a male-dominated industry, you've likely encountered challenges and opportunities. Can you share some of those insights with us?
Sure. So as I mentioned, I've got 20 plus years in the mining industry. Most of that was in the coal industry. I've worked over 3 different continents in a diversity of disciplines, and I've pretty much seen it all. I gotta say, it's been very exciting for me. What other industry do you get to participate in with such a dynamic market, global market, and then also the innovation of our engineering that happens every day, right? And then the impact to people's lives. I mean, that's the mining industry, so it's pretty fantastic. I've had so many amazing opportunities. I've lived in Australia. I've lived in China. I've spent substantial time working in the deserts of Mongolia, the deserts of China, in the United States, and here in Newfoundland and Labrador also. So it's been a great experience for me, not only for me, but for my family. My husband, my daughter, they've been along for the ride, and it's provided so much richness to our life. But yeah, there's been a lot of times where, I asked myself if I truly belonged, right? Being the only female sitting at the table, at the room. But I guess I've learned throughout my career that my voice counted, and that I brought a unique perspective that, quite frankly, the men in the room didn't have, right? And so I use that as my superpower. My superpower is to be curious and to ask for help and to grab those opportunities as they presented themselves. And, I guess I'd say there's a lot of people who want to help, right? And want to support, whether it be a female or anyone with diversity. You just have to have the courage to stand up and ask for that help.
Colleen, what opportunities do you see for women and diverse folks coming into the industry today?
I think the door is wide open due to what we've been talking about today, that mining industry may be seen as a laggard. Those statistics you pointed to with how it's perceived, that has really dogged us as an industry. I think the legacy sites, the perception that we don't adopt technology. But I really see companies like Valley Base Metals, like Rio Tinto, putting resources, putting thought, strategic thought into DEI. We've talked about a lot of those initiatives today, and what it means, practically speaking, is that there are KPIs, there are programs that people from diverse backgrounds can take advantage of. I know we're encouraged, and I'm sure your company is encouraged, community outreach too. So being part of a Women in Science and Engineering mentoring program has been a great opportunity for me since I came back to Newfoundland. And I sought out that program because the WISE program in Newfoundland is pretty well known across Canada for their summer student program, getting to young women before they finish high school, showing them what career choices are out there. So I really think the door is open, and companies are realizing that it's the right thing to do, and it's also good business sense. So getting plugged into where they can access, I think, is easier than ever.
Mm-hmm. And we talk a lot about, things making good business sense, and that is really important. And we talk about the KPIs and how we can actually measure that. But in your experience, and Bonnie, maybe I'll start with you on this. In your experience, can you explain what that means to make good business sense when folks show up? Why is diversity so important to the business in that regard?
Well, it just gives, like she said, so many different opinions. Like a female opinion is different. A lot of females think different than your male counterpart. You get versified opinions, right?
Diversity of thought.
Yes, yeah.
Excellent.
I was actually looking for some research on that because I know there's been, papers cited that speak to what Angela shared. And I think, I was thinking about some instances as you were talking, Angela, about being the only woman in the room. And you see it in action, that sort of thought process that we're all prone to it, like attracts like. So the conversation just goes in one direction, and when you insert a different point of view, when you insert a different cultural background, a different gender, a different life experience into the mix, you just get the ideas that wouldn't come out otherwise.
You get people thinking.
Yeah.
Yeah, differently. Yeah. Yeah.
We talked a bit about support and some of the committees and organizations and groups that exist to promote this. But what can decision makers and leaders do better?
I think we've got to be the change. We've got to be the one. I feel like as a woman in engineering today, we're getting better represented. Now it's our turn to open the door for whether it's a different cultural background, be that bridge, be the, not to say we've arrived as women in mining. I think we're still working on that, but yeah, use our platform to break in the next diversity opportunity into the group. I think those individual choices of leaders are important.
Yeah, I think I would agree with you. And it's about making it personal also, about, saying, yes, your company has a KPI, but this is my personal goal. And, as I look at building out my team, I, look across it and I want that diversity of thought, that comes from people from different backgrounds with different experiences, different educations, right? And different paths to where, we're all here now, but how did you get here, right? And that brings just that innovative thinking that you only get from that diversity.
And Alice, how have you seen these efforts change over the years?
So at one time, it was a quota, right? Something to put in your corporate responsibility report. And it was all about like filling in that KPI box on that, annual report. And, it was that crunch at the end to say like, how can we manipulate these numbers to make them look like something that they really aren't? And, how do we slice and dice it? I don't see that anymore. And I'm this is one thing I'm really proud about the organization that I'm a part of right now is it's not just rhetoric, right? They believe it. And it's good business sense, and they understand that it's good business sense. And I want to go back to, something what we were talking about in regards to, why it's important also to have that diversity, especially like as we think about females in the workforce and kind of uplifting. When you look at an employee base as a scarce resource, right? And you say, how do I maximize that resource? Because that's good business sense, right? Any resource you have, you want to maximize it. Where we are, we have limited housing. There's limited community support. So the best use of our resources to use what we have already that's in the community. So how do you increase that? Well, you make sure, you make it so, partners can both work in the, in the industry. That, you make it so, you make it easy, childcare, things like that. Make sure that that's available. And that's partnerships with the communities and the provinces, but so you can maximize that scarce resource that you have.
Even to back up more, you make sure that the students are realized that you're a viable option.
Yeah.
Myself and Tabitha visited the schools in the Bayvert area this year, and it's amazing the number of students didn't even know that there was a mine in the area. You got to make sure that they know. Like a lot of them said, as soon as I get out of school, I'm going to Alberta, or you got to make it exciting, make it a place for them to want to come to work, right?
I think those opportunities going out to schools, I know Leslie, the GM of Long Harbor Processing Plant, and I have done that in the last year, and it's rewarding. But even, I'd say more important is just getting out of our industry. We're kind of in a vacuum here, talking amongst ourselves. And I had a funny experience when I was in grad school at UBC, and I needed a couple of course credits. So I sat in on a seminar with a bunch of legal students who had a case study around the Oyu Tolgoi mine in Mongolia, and it was about international policy development and how should the Canadian government, as overseeing a company doing business there, approach the government in Mongolia. I can't remember the context, but I'd been in industry for a few years. Then I went back to school, and my advisor asked me to sit in on it, and immediately everyone in the room just said, well, Canada shouldn't be there. It's bad, and mining's bad, and what are we doing there? And I remember just kind of looking up around the table and thinking, like, do you know where your laptop comes from, or that plane ride that you had to take to come to school here? And it really was a shock to the system, because even in the mining part of the university where I studied, we all got that. So I think we need to sort of, branch out more, like you're doing, Bonnie, and I want to do more of, because people don't understand our industry. These conferences are great for making connections and finding people with like views, or views in the same sphere, but we forget there's a whole world out there that has a pretty poor understanding of what we do.
Yeah, it goes back to what I said in my presentation about making sure that we keep the people in the towns that we have, and starts right from kindergarten.
And again, when I opened the session, I acknowledged a recent Mining Industry Human Resource Council poll that revealed that young women do have a poor perception of the industry. How do we change that?
We got to give them the tools to help them change it, help us and them change it together. I think going to schools and starting early and promoting as much as we can, and holding events in our towns, and trying to attract as many women as we can in particular, and giving them the tools to be able to either educate themselves or get the training required so that they can do the work that we need them to do. I think that's part of the answer. A couple years ago, we hired 6 ladies to do fire watch, and it was underground, and I specifically targeted ladies because I wanted them to get the underground experience. And so I talked to the ladies. We ended up getting 5 ladies and 1 man. Of the 6 people, 1 lady backed out the other ladies, and that man are all still underground working right now. So we need to think outside the box sometimes. We need to make sure that we make the opportunities and make it available to the female population.
I was just going to say, and then the partnerships with the schools and trade, the university, trade organizations. I think that's key.
Yeah.
Colleen?
I thought the presentation by Angela, our CIM leader, was really important today. I think the advocacy that Mining Association of Canada and organizations that she spoke to are so important, and I think we've gotten better. I think we've had that marketing expertise come into our business and remind people about the connection between the primary resources that are our industry and the connection they have to the technology we all rely on, to our travel. There's been some really good statistics. Our PDAC presentation was excellent today, just talking about those graphics that illustrate the connection to the rest of the world. I think as I've moved on in my career, those have become more important. I wasn't sure what all those groups were for when I started out, but now I really make a point to be a member and make sure I'm familiar with their latest take on how the mining industry supports the economy.
I think back to last year, our CEO spoke at a green economy event and acknowledged the fact that the global energy transition can't happen without mining. And I think we need to tell our story better. Yeah. Thank you all for joining, and thank you for bringing so much authenticity, so much empathy, and fantastic knowledge. It's been really enlightening. I've really enjoyed this conversation. So thank you.
Thank you for having us.